Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, by Hashem Rakah Kodash, Barakatom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to Akim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Raya with another video, and I'm going to start it out with Psalm 58 verse 3. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. And this wicked is speaking of Esau, Edom, the border of wickedness in Malachi 1 and 4, whom the earth has been given into the hands of in Job 9 and 24. And ever since these Edomites came into their last rulership, beginning with the Renaissance, that little season, they've ruled this world through that sword, their blessing, as well as their witchcraft and wine, such as democracy, and especially using his media to propagandize the people into thinking these Edomites are the good guys and that they're completely justified in going into other nations, overthrowing sovereign leaders and setting up puppets that'll allow them to rape that nation of its resources. And a perfect example of media propaganda that Esau uses to get people on board with his military interventionism is the Call of Duty video game series, which is what we'll be getting into with this article on activistpost.com titled New Call of Duty Video Game Encourages Support for the White Helmets. And I grew up playing a lot of those Call of Duty games, and when you go back and look at the stories for them, it's very disturbing how propagandized those narratives are. Because in the first Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the U.S. Marines invade Iran, and the leader of the Iranian regime at the time's name is Assad, and also there's a nuclear detonation in Iran. And in the second Modern Warfare, Russia invades the U.S., as well as there's a false flag terrorist attack in an airport. The official trailer for the latest Call of Duty was released a few days ago, and it features the Syria narrative management operation known as the White Helmets depicted in heroic roles. Characters wearing the organization's signature headgear are seen clearing rubble in part of the trailer for Call of Duty Modern Warfare. To give you an idea on how popular the COD franchise is, as of this writing, the official YouTube version of the trailer has 27 million views, but you best believe they won't take that trailer down as a hate speech or discrimination or anything like that, even though these Call of Duty games psychologically manipulate the people into being for U.S. interventionism, but they'll take down videos that actually speak truth, especially videos by the men of the Lord, primarily through GMS, showing just how wicked this devil is. To be clear, the characters in the game are most certainly intended to resemble the White Helmets of Syria, and their presence there is most certainly intended to increase support for and interest in that group. How do I know? Its game writer has explicitly said so. Kurosaki says he wants Call of Duty to be spoken of as on par with the best war propaganda films, and he hopes Modern Warfare will inspire fans to check out the harrowing and eye-opening documentaries The White Helmets or Last Man in Aleppo, the LA Times reports. The White Helmets are what legendary journalist John Pilger describes as a complete propaganda construct, Slovakia. An operation designed by former British Edomite army officer and private military contractor James Le Mesurier to manipulate the narrative about what's going on in Syria. This excellent half-hour mini-documentary by James Corbett clearly outlines the way the operation is used to create footage implicating the Assad regime in the slaughter of civilians via chemical weapons attacks and other camera-friendly war crimes, the mountain of evidence of their ties to literal terrorist organizations in Syria, and the Western funding and media manipulations that have been pouring into elevating the outfit. It's a brilliant invention, really. have a purportedly neutral group filming on the ground in rebel-held areas where the White Helmets exclusively operate, and you can ensure an endless supply of footage which can be used to paint a longtime Western target for regime change as a barbarian who needs to be ousted. And indeed, the extremist jihadist factions which overran Syria with the backing of the US and its allies nearly succeeded in toppling Assad prior to Russia's intervention, and we may be certain that the agenda to control who rules over the geostrategically crucial region remains as intact as ever. This is Psalm 55, verse 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter. Oh, we need to overthrow Assad because he's using chemical weapons on his own people and killing peaceful protesters. We need to bring democracy to that autocratic nation, but war was in his heart. We really want to overthrow Assad to allow the state of Israel to be the main hegemony in the region, as well as build a pipeline through Syria to Europe to give oil to our other Edomites allies. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Everything this Edomite does has a nefarious purpose, especially through entertainment, such as Hollywood and these video games. The pro-White Helmets propaganda is not Call of Duty's first foray into U.S. military narrative management. As noted by journalist Max Blumenthal in April, an earlier COD game depicted the assassination of the leader of Venezuela and bizarrely attacking Venezuela's hydroelectric dam and energy grid with the goal of causing power outages like the ones the nation has been struggling with. Citing public information, Blumenthal documents how such games have been developed with the substantial input from America's military intelligence apparatus, as well as the COD designers' involvement with the Pentagon and the NATO narrative management from the Atlantic Council, that military-industrial complex that has its tentacles in every facet of society. Civilian and military life in the U.S. are just two sides of the same coin. Back in Psalms 55 and 21, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. Oh, these are just harmless shooter games for entertainment, but war was in his heart. We're subconsciously manipulating the masses into accepting whatever we tell them, that we're the good guys when we go over to these other nations and overthrow their governments who we say are bad and oppressing the people, and how we're going to set up democracy and make their lives better, when we're really just setting up puppets so we can rape that nation of its resources. And I'm going to play this video right here, but I'm going to just let y'all hear the audio because I don't want to get a copyright strike. As you know, YouTube's getting more strict on its censorship.
We often think of video games as fiction, but the US government has weaponized them to advance its agenda. Nowhere is this more clear than in Venezuela, where the US military has laundered regime change propaganda through some of the world's most popular first-person shooter games. This March, amid a US-backed right-wing coup attempt overseen by the Donald Trump administration, Venezuela saw a sudden collapse of its electrical infrastructure, plunging the country into darkness. This is renewed focus on the role of video games in psychologically conditioning users to support Venezuela's destruction, and in foreshadowing specific events that have taken place during the coup. Venezuelan citizen journalists Orlenis Ortiz and Sancocho Power have drawn attention to the similarity between the plot of a 2013 first-person shooter game, Call of Duty Ghosts, and alleged acts of U.S. sabotage against Venezuela that took place this March. Call of Duty Ghosts is set in a dystopian future after the Middle East is destroyed by nuclear weapons. A Venezuelan general comes into power, establishing a socialist-style federation that spreads across Latin America like a disease, uniting all oil-producing nations and expelling U.S. citizens. You, as the player, are part of an elite force of U.S. commandos that invades the country, murders the socialist leader, and destroys his federation. The U.S. Special Operations Forces open their assault by launching a rocket at a dam that looks strikingly similar to Venezuela's Guri Dam, an act of deliberate terror that floods the streets of Caracas. The city is recreated in vivid detail, all the way down to the Chavista graffiti that colors its walls. The mission ends with the execution-style killing of Venezuela's leader, who's shot in the back in slow motion by America's finest. And in case you weren't sure about his commitment to socialism, that leader's wearing a red beret, just like Hugo Chavez did. During a follow-up mission, the player returns to Caracas, breaks into a power plant, and inserts a computer virus into the electricity grid, plunging the city into darkness. Call of Duty Ghosts is not the only game that gives players the opportunity to simulate the destabilization of Venezuela. In a more crudely designed 2008 first-person shooter called Mercenaries 2: World in Flames, a populist billionaire named Ramon Solano takes over Venezuela in a coup and pledges to restore the country's oil profits to its people.
It is time the Venezuelan people stop paying for the greed of foreign interests. We will make them pay dearly for our oil. From this day forward, everybody pays. Viva Venezuela!
Everybody pays.
Gamers get to play the part of Matthias Nilsson, a European sociopath who's willing to kill anyone if the price is right. Under contract from a multinational oil company, Nilsson tears Venezuela apart and ultimately winds up blowing Solano's brains out inside his palace, a place that looks suspiciously like the 4F compound where Hugo Chavez worked when he was president.
It's bad for business. So is this. Now I have to kill you.
Like so many first-person shooter games, Call of Duty and Mercenaries 2 were developed with substantial input from America's military intelligence apparatus. Back in 2003, at the dawn of the so-called War on Terror, Pandemic Studios, the company behind Mercenaries 2, was subcontracted as part of a $45 million endeavor formed by the Army 5 years prior to connect academics with local entertainment and video game industries. A decade later, Call of Duty designer Dave Anthony was enlisted by a former Pentagon official named Stephen Grundman to advise the Art of Future War project, an initiative of NATO's unofficial think tank in Washington, the Atlantic Council. The project also sought advice from Oliver North, the right-wing military fanatic, who was convicted of a felony for his role in destabilizing Central America during the 1980s.
I'm Lieutenant Oliver North, your instructor.
In fact, North was credited as a military consultant for the 2012 Call of Duty Black Ops, and made a cameo appearance in the game.
Lieutenant Colonel North, NSC.
Chillingly, one future war scenario envisioned by Anthony was an assault on Las Vegas, similar to the 2008 terrorist attacks on Mumbai.
Get down!
Makers of a Call of Duty sequel openly boasted of working with a Pentagon advisor. So did the attack on Venezuela's electricity grid and hydroelectric dam, depicted in Call of Duty, forecast another future assault? Venezuela's government and millions of the country's citizens certainly think so. Here's Senator Marco Rubio on March 7th, openly calling for widespread unrest across Venezuela just hours before the hydroelectric dam at Guri collapsed.
Is that not ultimately what needs to happen here? The combination of widespread unrest, loss of military and elite support, and continued international pressure. Over the next few weeks, Venezuela is going to enter a period of suffering no nation in our hemisphere has confronted in modern history.
That's all she wrote. That's why we call you Edomites the devil, which simply means deceiver, because everything you've ever done has an ulterior motive.